Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Secretary General, Deputy Prime Ministers, Ministers, Ambassadors, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to all of you. Thank you, Mr. Secretary General, for your sympathy and condolences to our people. As yourself mentioned yesterday, unfortunately, as a result of a terrorist suicidal attack, over 50 people lost their lives and many more injured. And these were the religious scholars gathered together for the anniversary of the birthday of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And that shows the cruelty of the enemies of humanity, that they don't spare any moment or opportunity to exercise terror. Thank you for your sympathy. Being here, myself and our delegation, as part of OECD Eurasia Week, which coincides with the 10th anniversary of the initiative in the competitive program. I want to thank you, EU, and OECD in EU and all participants for their support and also for your excellent hospitality and the discussions and engagement which you had and we had together, and also for your insightful statement just earlier on. And in fact, in the positive developments which has taken place, most of the countries around the table in OECD and EU especially are an important part of it. And if I may focus on Afghanistan's recent efforts and achievements as part of reform agenda with respect to economic development in general and private sector growth in particular. The new Afghanistan Constitution in 2004 not only ushered in a new era of democracy and civil rights, but also laid the groundwork for market economy. Our challenge from the start was to transition from a centralized state-owned economic system to one where private sector can become the engine of growth, productivity, connectivity, job creation, and revenue generation. We also agree that the private sector is a key driver in achieving SDGs. Since taking office as part of the unity government in late 2014, President Ghani and myself, we have prioritized our economic reform agenda, which places special focus on private sector development, improving the business environment, and expanding trade, especially exports. The government's efforts are producing promising results. The World Bank just recently recognized Afghanistan as a top performer under the Doing Business Report 2019 amongst 190 world economies, as our ranking jumped from 183 to 167. Thanks to the new land and air corridor, our exports have increased by 40%, showing more dynamism from our private sector in opening new markets abroad. The economy is growing, and we want the growth rate to further increase in the coming years. However, we still have a long way to go. There is significant room for urgent reform action, especially improving the enabling environment for our micro, small, and medium businesses, supporting their ability to meet domestic demand in a more meaningful way while placing greater focus on expanding and diversifying our export baskets and markets. And there is the challenge of fighting corruption and the illicit economy. Ladies and gentlemen, the private sector in Afghanistan has grown remarkably in size in scope compared with the early 2000s, when the private sector structurally did not exist in a major way. It's now time to build on the achievements of the past years and put our focus on the sectors that can have the largest impact in terms of job creation, income generation, and production for both domestic demand and foreign markets. An essential component for reaching that goal is to turn our attention to small and micro businesses, which so far have not received sufficient attention, but make up a big part of our private sector. Some of the key challenges of this sector include operation in the informal economy, which creates challenges for public service delivery to them, creating fewer employment and generating tax revenue from their business activities. The delivery of essential services to small and micro businesses are rather costly in terms of time and money. Limited access to finance, land, electricity, skilled labor, regional markets, and certification are major impediments for the growth of these businesses. Inability to adequately meet the domestic market demands, unnecessary compliance burdens imposed by the regulatory environment. Mr. Secretary General, ladies and gentlemen, to overcome the challenges, the government has already started implementing reforms to improve the business climate, boost private sector development, and grow the exports. We are also making sure that women entrepreneurs, head of households, can benefit from the reform in new policies. Furthermore, for the first time ever, the government has created Private Sector Development Executive Committee, PRISEC, but on top of that, High Economic Council led by President Ghani himself, with the participation of all the members of the cabinet as well as the private sector and civil society. While in the PRISEC, or Private Sector Development Executive Committee, there is a level of interagency mechanism that brings together the private sector, the government, and all international partners under a single umbrella. Example of our recent efforts to address the challenges that our business community faces include approving and implementing a national export strategy, national trade policy, reform for the DBI, and development and implementation of National Priority Program for Private Sector Development, or NPP-PSD 2018-2023. It is worth mentioning that NPP-PSD is demand-driven, time-bound, and budgeted. Furthermore, private sector development and business-to-business partnership development have been incorporated into our regional cooperation agenda under the Regional Economic Cooperation Conference called RECA in the Heart of Asia, Istanbul process. Ladies and gentlemen, though an excellent collaborative effort with the OECD and a strong support from EU, we are boosting the private sector development and entrepreneurship policies in the country, specifically to provide an enabling environment for the growth of the micro and small and medium enterprises. 3 technical workshops have been held under the program, and the outcome is a peer-reviewed set recommendations identifying pressing barriers to businesses and proposing actions to address them in the 3 specific dimensions: business formalization, access to finance, digitalization of government services for businesses. On behalf of the National Unity Government of Afghanistan, I welcome these recommendations to achieve solutions proposed in this peer-reviewed paper. The government is committed to taking the following concrete steps: include the core recommendations into national priority programs for private sector development, develop long-term development framework specifically for medium, small, and micro enterprises, update our e-governance strategy We have made good progress in the telecom and information technology sector and can now take those capabilities in connectivity to the field of service delivery. Give more urgency to tackling those barriers that currently limit access to finance for businesses. Continue our efforts to improve our doing business ranking. In this year's ranking, the World Bank recognized the reform actions Afghanistan implemented. It gave it the coveted spot, the top reformer. Improve public-private dialogue through existing platforms, High Economic Council, PRISIC, Cabinet, Council of Ministers, and also other mechanisms and regional level mechanisms through RECA in Heart of Asia. Ladies and gentlemen, with the new generation of young reform-minded individuals in the government, we have better opportunity and greater ability to be more effective in delivering on our economic reform promises, creating jobs, generating revenue, and becoming more self-reliant. Therefore, on behalf of the government of Afghanistan, and I believe tens of thousands of members of Afghan business communities, I invite the EU and OECD to seriously consider and, if possible, commit to a long-term technical partnership as part of its Eurasia initiatives and other programs that will extend all the way to 2025-2030. We discussed the issue of signing an MOU in the coming future. We are looking forward to do that. Structural reforms of the nature recommended usually succeed when long-term approach and a strong political will are given. Finally, as we head soon to Geneva Ministerial Conference, and I was happy to learn that the findings of the peers review will be disseminated in upcoming Geneva Conference. That shows the other side of the picture in Afghanistan, which is the purpose of the Geneva Conference, to take stock of what has happened in Afghanistan, developments in the country based on our mutual commitment with our partners in the international community, and to review our overall commitments and benchmarks with the donor community. I thank participants, stakeholders from the business community, the OECD, EU delegation, USAID, IFC World Bank Group for their contribution and support to this work. Thank you.